Hello and happy Steel Week. Steel Day is formally Friday, but this virtual world we're living in these days allows us to spread the events out, and I'm happy for that. I'm Charlie Carter, president of AISC, and I thank you for joining us today for a Steel Table Talk with 8 remarkable educators. Earlier this year, AISC awarded each of our participants with a special honor, which I'll describe momentarily. I'm honored to moderate this panel of people who are making a difference in education and research, and thereby our profession and industry. First, it's my privilege to welcome our Lifetime Achievement Award winners who are here with us, Sam Easterling and Cheming Wang. And would you each please take a moment and introduce yourselves and tell us where you're calling in from? Sam, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm calling from the campus of Iowa State University, where I have the honor of serving as the Dean of the College of Engineering. And as you might imagine, in that role, I don't do a whole lot of day-to-day work in steel education anymore, unfortunately. Still involved with some research. Prior to being here, I spent 32 years at Virginia Tech, involved with teaching, professional service, research in the area of steel structures. Been involved directly with AISC for most of the past 35 years. Happy to be here.
Okay, thank you, Sam. And Cheming, that brings us to you.
Home for 6 months since March. Yeah, I'm a professor at the University of California, San Diego. I joined the UC San Diego in 1994. Prior to that, I worked at the Northeastern University for 6 years. Yeah, so my research is in seismic design of steel structures, and I have the honor to serve on a few AISC committees, including the Committee of Specifications, Committee of Research. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Now, lifetime awards are for the full body of your lifetime of work, but I'm motivated to point out that neither one of you has to stop. That's not the implication of the award. And some people have worried in the past about that. So if that puts your mind at ease, I'm happy. I'm further privileged to welcome our Special Achievement Award recipients, both of whom have made special contributions to the research on which Speed Corps is based, and that's the reason for their awards. Michelle Bruneau and Amit Varma, please introduce yourselves as well. Michelle, you can go first. Michelle, you must unmute.
Done. There we go. So I'm Michel Bruneau from the University at Buffalo. I've been there since 1998. Prior to that, I was at the University of Ottawa. And prior to that, I worked for a number of years in a consulting engineering firm. I've been working for those decades on steel structures and other things, but working in earthquake engineering mainly. So I've had the pleasure and privilege to serve on AISC 341 for a little while now, and as of lately on AISC 360 on the composite committee.
Okay, thank you. Michelle and Amit, you're next.
Greetings. My name is Amit Varma. I'm a professor here at Purdue University, and it's a pleasure for me to be able to join this panel and see the folks who've contributed so much to structural steel. I've been at Purdue University for almost 16 years and going. Right now, I'm not in Bowen Laboratory. That's my virtual background that makes it look like I'm in Bowen Laboratory. But I picked a picture that was fitting with the theme, where I've got my Speed Corps connection specimen right there at the back, and I'm hiding the concrete by standing in front of it.
All right, well, thank you for that. I appreciate you bringing the picture from the lab. Okay, I'm also pleased to welcome our Early Career Faculty Award winners, Emily Baker, Negara, Lahami, Korrasani, and Julie Fogerty. Please introduce yourselves. Emily, you can go first. Please unmute.
Okay, sorry about that.
Happens to the best of us.
Yet again. Anyway, Emily Baker. I'm a professor, assistant professor of architecture at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. And my work has been in kind of the realm of digital fabrication and how structure and architectural tectonics can kind of discover some new territory through making physical prototypes of structures and teaching students to do the same.
Okay, thank you. Negara, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Charlie. My name is Negara Lahami Korrasani. I'm also honored to be part of this panel, and I'm an assistant professor at the University at Buffalo. I've been at UB since 2016, and my area of research, one of the primary areas of research is looking at assessment and design of steel structures for fire. And I also teach relevant topics on fire and steel to our students. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Julie, you're next.
Hi, thanks. My name is Julie Fogerty. I'm an associate professor now at California State University, Sacramento. I've been here since 2015. My background is the design of steel members and under seismic loading. And I recently am now serving as the PI and co-PI on 2 NSF improving undergraduate STEM education projects.
Okay, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you all. Finally, it's a pleasure to welcome our 2020 Millick Fellowship Award winner, Matthew Yarnell. Matt, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Charlie. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm joining you from College Station, Texas. I'm assistant professor at Texas A&M. I've been here since 2017. Before that, I was assistant professor at Tennessee Tech for 4 years. Got my degrees from Lehigh and Drexel with a short stint for 5 years in consulting. And my research, a lot of it in the structural steel behavior areas, as well as bridge-related research. So once again, it's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, thank you all. And let me again share my congratulations with each of you for your awards. You're a very impressive virtual stage, and I'm glad we will have this opportunity to celebrate you and talk with you today. Now, if you're part of the audience, I encourage you to submit questions in the comment section. We will be answering audience questions later in the roundtable. And I'll get the conversation going with a few questions that we have at the outset. These questions are open to all panelists. You can even feel free to put each other on the spot if you wish as you answer, and if you have questions for each other. And so we'll start with what is your absolute favorite steel structure?
Charlie, can I start on this one?
You may.
Because I will cheat. I will name 2. I'll name 2 because the first one is not exactly steel. I think the first one is the Eiffel Tower, which, as you know, is iron. But I have to name it because I've been up and down and so many times that during the day, at night, sunset, sunrise, through the stairs, through the elevator. So if I didn't name it, my wife would be really upset because she had to follow me through all of these stairs. But if I stick to steel, I'll have to say the Golden Gate Bridge. Not just because I went across driving, walking, bicycling, and all that stuff. I also had the pleasure of going up in the tower elevator to the top to see the saddle and all the entire structure. So it's great. But I think these 2 structures have a couple of things in common. Besides being classics, the history behind the structures is fantastic. I mean, there's books and movies and what have you. The landscape, the view is phenomenal, and they fit in the landscape because they are architecturally pleasing at the same time. They're perfect fits, and more importantly, they are sort of challenges. Things that people said sometimes would not be possible to do, and yet it's been done. A lot of folks don't know that the Golden Gate Bridge is named like that because of the Golden Gate, which is the water entry from the Pacific Ocean to the San Francisco Bay, which many people thought for many decades that it was impossible to build a bridge there, right? And so that's what we do as engineers. We do the impossible. I tell my students, engineering is about doing the impossible every day. Miracles take longer, but the impossible we do every day, right? So that's my favorite structure.
Okay, thank you. Who wants in next?
Yeah, so Charlie, I'll chime in. Let me shut myself off so you can see one of my favorite. This is the New River Gorge Bridge. in West Virginia. And I, like Michelle, tend to think of bridges. And I suppose that's, even though the vast majority of my work has been in the area of buildings, but bridges, the steel is exposed. You can see them. They're just kind of iconic structures. And this one's certainly fascinating. It's about 900 feet or so off the surface of the river. I've been over the bridge many times. I've been out on the catwalk under the bridge. And let me assure you, if you're not, you don't think you're afraid of heights, you at least are going to hold on a little tighter to the railing when you walk out over the center. But the other thing is just this bridge reduced the travel time by something on the order of an hour between the 2 points. So it had a huge impact on not only the economy of West Virginia, but also everyone that comes up and down through there. And you drive that road, you'll see a lot of Canadians coming out of Ontario. You'll see folks coming out of New York. So it really had a huge impact.
Thanks, Sam.
Since
Who
there's
else?
a team of bridges, I'll pick another bridge following Michelle and Sam. I'll pick the Brooklyn Bridge in New York, and reason because it was one of the first bridges that steel cable wires were used in the construction. And aside from the design of those stays and cables for taking the gravity and windows, lateral loads on that bridge structure, I think that, again, echoing the two previous examples, the historic context and the designer, John Roebling, and his vision and dream, and then how he passed away during the construction because of issues that they had, and his son continuing. And then he also got sick due to the construction issues that they had, and eventually his wife. So one of the first examples where a woman took over construction back in 1870s, 1880s, and took it to completion. So it's been an inspiration for many engineers as well as artists, not just engineers, again, the context within that city. So that's my answer to that.
Very nice.
Let me chip in a little bit. Yeah, the top two bridges in my mind are the same as those mentioned by Professor Bruno. Yeah, what impressed me of those two bridges were they were designed so many years ago without the modern technology that we have. And when I went to the Eiffel Tower, I look at what kind of members, the members that they have to build that one. All they had at that time are angles and the bars and the rivets. And similarly for the Bay Bridge and of the Golden Gate Bridge, I was amazed, at that time, and they have to be very, very detailed to put everything together nicely. I was very impressed with the way that they could do that so many years ago. Regarding this, the most famous bridge that, let me give you another one example, which is not the structure. Okay, I would say that because I have been involved in steel testing for quite a number of years, and I like to go to the construction site to take photos to share with students. And you may remember that the cover of the textbook that Professor Bruno and I co-authored, that is the cassette, SCPF cassette. I find it beautiful, even though it's not that amazing structure that we're talking about, but those details, really impress me when they do it right and economically and beautifully. That also impressed me, those kind of details.
You just made some steel fabricator very happy. They worked hard on that.
I'll speak up. I being I think maybe one non-engineer here, I love things like, I don't know if you guys know Conrad Foxman's space frame structures, things like that. But I think my favorite to bring up is the Eames House in California, because it was very early, at least, if not the first, house made of steel and constructed of steel pieces and prefabricated pieces. And it's, despite that, it's very warm and inviting and an amazing place to be. So Eames House for me.
Got a good selection going here. Who wants to add to it?
I'll throw out a building. My favorite building, I think, is the John Hancock Center in Chicago. And it's because you can see the structural form, right? The X bracing is exposed. And I think that's a really nice thing to see, since we tend to hide the structural system in our general buildings. So.
You will be very welcome in Chicago. We have this problem that all the buildings that we know by a name don't have that name anymore, but everyone here just wants to go with John Hancock. Very nice.
Speaking of Chicago, Charlie, I'd have to say my favorite building would have to be the Willis Tower. And it's really got to do, of course, there's a beautiful structural concept and system over there, but it's got to do with the person behind the engineering of it, which is Fazlur Khan. He represented to me, coming in as an immigrant from a different part of the world, the potential for success and the potential for doing something very special in this foreign land and be recognized for it, which to me, when I see the building, I see Khan standing right behind it, and it makes a very personal story for me. That's a building from the past. A building from the present, I have to say my favorite building right now is the Rainier Square Tower. Because it uses the speed code construction. Not many people have seen it yet, but there again is an engineer standing right behind it, which is Ron Clemency, who's been quite an inspiration as well.
Matt, you're in.
Yeah, I was delaying a little bit because Negara took mine. I was going to talk about the Brooklyn Bridge and the history of it. I always appreciated. But I guess a tie for me would be the George Washington. I'm from the Northeast, and growing up, I would cross the George Washington Bridge, and it was designed by Othmar Ammann, who years later I worked for a company called Ammann & Whitney. He was the founder of the company. So I always admired that structure, going across it as a child, going to New York Yankees games and things. And that structure always stands out in my mind. And little known, the steel towers that are showing the structural form, the structural steel was originally supposed to be encased by Othmar Ammann with almost like masonry and other things, and it was taken out of the construction. And he was not in favor of it, actually, but it's, I think, one of the things that makes the structure look as impressive as it is. So anyway, that's my second pick.
The original value engineering.
Yeah.
Well, that's an impressive list. I'll move us to our second question. It's a question that has either one or two parts, depending on how you want to answer it. What has attracted you to work with structural steel and in academia?
Let me start. Yeah, I never thought that I would join academia. What happened was when I went to UC Berkeley for my PhD study, and I had the opportunity to work on the shaking table testing of a reduced scale 6-story brace frame, steel brace frame. And I had a very tough professor, Professor Patero, who insisted that we give a presentation once a week. I was forced to give a presentation, in front of the small group, and also through that research that I find it so fascinating of the steel structure and the seismic loading. And there's so much that we did not know at the time. That was in the early and the mid 80s. Yeah, that changed my course of my career.
Yes, I'll go second. So there's two parts to that question, I guess: structural steel and academia, right? So the
Yes.
attraction to structural steel, I think, is because it's it's an homogeneous material, right? Well, somewhat at the scale we work on anyhow. And so that makes so much sense. I mean, you can just follow from mechanics of material into the design process. You don't have to do any fudging of things and best fit curves and what have you. So you can work with logical and conceptual and concepts that sort of flow through. And also because of the work in earthquake engineering. Now I'm going to say something here that maybe I'll receive some hate mail, but I don't think it will come from people on this panel. I think if you're going to do earthquake engineering, steel is the way to go. Because if you're relying on energy dissipation and ductility, it is the material. I don't think there's anything that comes close. Now to go to academia, I think the attraction is as I mentioned before, well, let's come back to a definition of engineering, right? Engineering is about taking things that exist and putting them together to create something that never existed before. At least it's one of the definitions. It's the one I like. And so it's bringing an aspect of creativity to the process, the ability to create something new. And what better way to do that than in a research environment in a university, in academia? So not only we have the ability to create it, we can test proof it, we can crash it, destroy it, do better, improve, iterate. Eventually we get there. And so we have the freedom to do that. And the bonus in the end is if it gets implemented in practice, if we can get industry to buy into it. And that sort of ties in with what I mentioned about at the beginning about the joy of doing the impossible every day. If I could have cheated one notch more and had a third building, all-time steel structures, I would have added the Rainier Square project, but I thought I was already making a long list. But the Rainier Square project is a good example of that, right? It's the speed core, it's a new idea, it's pushing it forward and trying to see how it works and being creative. So that's the attraction.
Thank you, Michelle. Who else?
Well, for me, I was attracted to steel from maybe if you listen to the video interviews that we did from my early high school time, learning to weld, and kind of part of what I loved about steel was that it's strong and yet malleable. So, I like to work with the property of being able to fold. It's a different scale than a lot of you guys work with, but I just find that so fascinating that it could be so strong and yet then you could suddenly melt and have a connection that's, just as strong as the material. So I think the quickness that I could work with it, the strength, were really attractive to me. And so, yeah, in academia felt like the place to go try to be creative. So, and I worked as an architect for a while, practicing architect. And so, the speed of innovation is slow when you're in practice and everything has to work perfectly well. And, you don't experiment on your clients usually. Academia seemed like the right place to go kind of make some weird stuff and see what happened.
I can go next. In terms of steel, I guess for me started with, again, the fire engineering side. So steel, we heard it's very good for speed of construction and for allowing us to innovate, come up with new innovations. And a lot of the time, those cases, the question of fire protection might come up. And what we currently have in terms of prescriptive design works a lot of the time, but when we get to these new ideas and new innovations, then the question sometimes come up that, okay, we have to analyze the structure for fire and how it would stand. And the research side, not knowing, the answer to those questions and then finding them out later through the research, that's the exciting part. And then why academia? I would add to, so I completely agree with what has been said so far in terms of creativity and research. And I would add that another aspect would be the education part and in dealing with the students. And a lot of the time, undergraduate as well as, you know, research students, PhD students, you get to know them when they start, and then you see how they progress, how they advance, and how you we get to mentor them, and we also learn with them, and then they start a career. So that's also intriguing and fulfilling, that not only we make an impact through research, but hopefully we'll also preparing our workforce, or our, you know, next generation of engineers.
So I can chime in, Charlie. So, you know, for me, it was almost a linear path. You know, when I was an undergraduate and getting ready to go to work, had a couple of job offers to decide between. I just knew I was interested in structural engineering, not so much steel, and just decided that, you know, with a general civil engineering degree program, certainly in my era, if you will, you know, you don't have the opportunity to really do much of a deep dive in any particular area. So I felt like I needed more education. And so I decided to get a master's degree and not go to work. And during that time, I had the opportunity to teach courses, actually my own course, kind of start to finish. And that's where it really ingrained in me this desire to you know, be in higher ed. Went on, had to have a PhD, of course, and went on and developed a strong interest in research. But while still a master's student, the interest in steel was really driven by the courses that I took and being in the lab with Professor Luttrell at WVU. And likewise, during that time, a couple of my classmates and I went off to a Structural Stability Research Council annual meeting in Toronto. And there you were in the room with 200 leading, not only structural engineers, but people that focus predominantly on steel, both academics as well as practicing engineers. And, you know, Ted Columbus, that's where I met Ted the first time, I think, although obviously he wouldn't remember that. David Nethercott from the UK, Nick Traher from Australia, Lynn Beadle. So just the folks whose names you read in all the literature at the time. And likewise, during that time as a graduate student at WVU, really this, what Michelle said, that when you're studying structural behavior or stability, the steel members are so cleanly defined, and the mechanics related better for me than either, you know, concrete or timber for that matter. So it was kind of that linear progression that got me going down that path.
Well, thank you for that. Let's take a different path here for a moment. There's a lot of collaboration across the academic community. Who on the session today has worked together, and where did you cross paths, and what was it like? And I'll say right at the start, bonus points for creating cocktail party conversation with what you share. Oh, that's not a lot of sharing so far.
Okay, let me start.
I'll jump
Let me
back.
start.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, John.
Okay. Yeah, actually I had, while at Berkeley, that Monsieur Bruno and I were classmates. And after graduation, I went to Northeastern University, then he went to Canada, right? Michel, did you go to?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Went to Toronto for consulting.
Yeah, that was in around the 93, 94 that he invited me to join him to write that textbook that he led, the tactile design of steel structure. And I have the luxury, you know, that the pleasure to work with him. That was a marvelous experience. Yeah, so that's my interaction with one member on the board. Julie is another one, even though I did not work directly with her, okay, but she was one of the pioneers in the US that to study a very hot topic, the deep column research. Is that right? Deep column. So that one we also had a good amount of overlap in terms of research. Matt is another one. He received an award from AISC to work on a research project he may want to talk about. And I serve on the advisory board, and it's fun that I interact with younger researcher that I have the pleasure to work with a few of you.
I think I'll join in, chime in, because you mentioned me. So I guess since Charlie wanted to have a cocktail party story, I think the book project started pretty much on a cocktail party story, because we were sitting at a conference table on the banquet, and I can't remember which conference it was, and Charming was sitting next to me. And we were talking about the concrete book, Park and Poly. It was sort of unique in the reinforced concrete world, and there was no counterpart in steel. And being young and naive, we thought, well, maybe we should do one. That's how it
was
started.
After a few cocktails, huh?
Many cocktails, obviously. So that's all I can say. But over time, it turned out to be a great fun project to do with Chao-Ming. I think Chao-Ming is a very structured thought process, and he's very thorough, and he's always technically correct. And so it was a lot of fun to do this project with him. And but also I've had the pleasure to collaborate with Amit Varma and Negara as well on a recent project. So in all these cases, it's been truly enjoyable and fun, but I just wanted to throw in the cocktail party story that you were looking for.
Yeah, let me comment a little bit. During that process to write the first edition, the Northridge earthquake came. It created a lot of problems for us. We did not know how to write at that time. Yeah, but it was a very fun experience in our career.
I guess I have one. It's not a steel research collaboration, but I didn't ask Julie if it's okay if I share this. But from the last NASCC conference, the last one that was in person was the first annual steel stability or steel game show. I don't know, Julie, remember what it was called, the structural stability game show or whatnot. And Zimian from Bucknell was sort of hosting with several others, and there must have been over 100 people in the room, and then you had to log on to this app. And Julie and I just happened to be sitting next to each other, and we entered the game show. And I don't even remember what our name was, but we won. We got first place. I'm still waiting for the check to come in the mail, but we won. That was our first collaboration, and we got first place. So maybe we collaborate on a proposal or something. We'll do the same.
Well, you'll be happy to know that they're doing the structural stability game show again as a Steel Day event this year. And, that should be very interesting again.
Yeah, we're reigning champions, so maybe we should enter.
Well, a couple of you have alluded to it, and I've always valued the interaction we have in the committee work that we get to do, and AISC committees and those of other organizations tend to mix so well the profession, the industry, and academia, and many others. And what an opportunity it is to work together, and many of you are involved in that, and to the great benefit of AISC, the profession, and the industry, I might add. Any other tales? Nobody's really given me anything I can use in my next speech at the spec committee or anything like that. I have to pull those stories out later. Okay, let's move on to another question, and I'll put you on the spot. What do you want to ask each other?
I'll ask an easy question, and I won't pinpoint. I won't pick a name. I just maybe we're sort of a junior versus a more senior group. So everybody on the more senior side, what kind of advice do you have for the four of us on the junior side?
So I think the word you were looking for is old.
No. That's what I said. More senior.
Don't worry, he can take it.
There's a few more years of experience there that you might want to share with us.
Accomplished, Sam, accomplished.
Yeah, there you go. I would just say that, to Charlie's point, I think one of the things that's been sort of central to my professional activities has been the work with Aisc. And while now that's on the specification committee and TC5, but early days it wasn't that. It was engaging at the conference, it was doing other things, projects. In fact, that's where Chao Ming and I really first met. We both had projects that were jointly funded by AISC, AISI, and the National Science Foundation years ago, the program that Jerry Heyer led. But it's that connectivity that you have that I think just being engaged, being with the group, things will come your way, right? You get to know people directly and interacting with them. And to me, that's been probably one of the single most enjoyable as well as very beneficial. It's easy to say work hard and all those things. Everybody's doing that anyway, right? But it's I tell students all the time that it's that first job, you walk out the door, so they may care a little bit about how you performed academically, right? I mean, they sort of assume you're coming out of a strong program, that you've done well academically. They care much more about attitude and work ethic. And so those things carry a long way. At least I felt that way for me.
Thank you.
I have yet to figure out the answer, but let me ask Senior Professor Bruno. Yeah, that he is probably one of the very few most productive researchers in the country that I'm aware of. Yeah, he was in Japan, in New Zealand, after the big earthquakes. He led the big lab, the earthquake center at Buffalo, and he wrote at least 2 novels. How did you manage time?
I don't know the answer to that, Xiaoming. I will attribute that to the fact that I have a defective brain, and that after a while, things switch from the right side of the brain to the left side of the brain, and I'm not sure I can control that process. It's a defective brain. And so it's good on one way because it brings right side things to the engineering as well. And so left side thing, I don't know which one is left and right anymore, but it allows an interesting mix of the two. And it's just how it works. I don't know. I've never figured it out myself. But I will tell you one thing, it's a very slow process if you look at it, right? It's not happening fast. Maybe I should not have said that online. I might get asked to be put in an institution after a comment like that.
Your secret is safe with us. We have a question from the audience, and it asks, how can industry help with your mission as educators? We've done shop tours. Perhaps there are other ways. Are there highlights of industry interactions that have been particularly helpful to you and your students?
I think the new virtual tours.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think the virtual tours that have been posted have been particularly helpful, especially during this time when we can't get out to fabricators or the mills. So go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that. That highlights some virtual things that have been placed with mills and fabricators and others to illustrate the steel industry and steel fabrication and erection. Those are a feature of Steel Day.
Sorry, Charlie,
yep,
I will venture, there's a lot of things that the industry can do. I think at this juncture in research, the research funding is critical. And not only in dollars, but in kind. I mean, for example, on some of the research projects, we've had fantastic support from steel fabricators, those who also have donated steel, those who have done construction work for us. I mean, all of that, it's big dollars, and it's not always in cash, it's in kind. And it matters a lot, because if it was like you need to get money from NSF to purchase these services, the university takes a cut. So it's a lot more money than what we actually pay. So, I mean, it's tremendous value. Everything the industry does to help research in any way possible is truly appreciated and truly valuable.
I would add not just like in-kind support of, just donating steel, but donating their time, because this is my first AISC project with the Millick study, and chiming and indicated, he volunteers his time. So we have, obviously academics and, folks from AISC, but there are several people from industry, fabricators, mills, even, design firms that are all, volunteering their time and all that. But we've only had 2 committee meetings thus far, but the feedback's been tremendous. So volunteering even your time to serve on a committee, like a steering committee, or those kind of things have been, I've noticed have been tremendously valuable, because you all are doing those things day to day. And our perspective is very different on the research and academic side.
Charlie, I would add that, it's for us indirectly, but it's really directly for students. The impact over time that visiting either fabrication shops, either for building shops or bridge shops, I'd have them in a cold form steel, pre-engineered metal building operation, getting the students in there and having the industry provide that was just, it's hard to put value on that, because it's so high. And we don't know how many students it impacted and how many of them are working in the structural steel industry today because of those things. The other thing I would say was just the engagement with, beyond the, fabricators, having structural engineers come in and interact with the students. It's the same impact, right? They're talking about these spectacular projects. When you have a Bill Baker stand up in front of an audience and talk about, doing the primary lateral system design on 3 sheets of paper for the Burj Khalifa Tower on an airplane, and showing those 3 sheets of paper, it just knocks everybody back in their chair, and those impacts are really, really important.
I would like to remind people in the audience, especially the junior faculty members, that AIC is very helpful. If you have a need or you have some idea to get help from AIC, whenever you want to have the steel or fabrication donated, they are very helpful. And if you don't know who to contact, my suggestion would be the director of research, Devin Huber, that you can find the contact information from AIC website. That'll be a starting point. No matter your project is funded by AIC or not by AIC, contact them would be very helpful. It's my experience.
Other thoughts on what industry can do?
Maybe I can, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sure. I was just going to echo what others have said, because I've definitely taken students on tours of facilities, shops, which is excellent. Had engineers. Actually, there's an engineer in my class right now consulting with my architecture students who are trying to work out building structures, and somebody from Guy Nordensen's office is volunteering time, which is really awesome. So yeah, there's and I've also had folks who've donated their time to a group of students who are doing a building project, in terms of your expertise and advice on putting things together and engineering both. So I think just overlap and engagement in general is is valuable in so many ways.
Michelle, did you want to say something as well?
Oh, I maybe just wanted to expand on some of these things. The AISC has been extremely dynamic in having an open mind about new structural systems over the past few decades. I mean, I look at all the new systems that have made it in Aisc 341. It started prior to Northridge. We had concentrically braced frame and moment resisting frames and a little bit of eccentrically braced frames. And now we have lots of that. And we have buckling restraint brace frames, steel plate shear walls. We're adding composite wall system. And even in the moment frames, there's a whole range of connections that have sort of been added to Aisc 358. And seems to me that Aisc is very progressive in that direction. And that is good. I mean, we were talking about the research. And so what it does is it puts more tools in the engineer's toolbox. And they may not want to use these tools right away. I understand that there's a momentum in industry, that people are very comfortable sometimes continuing doing what they've been doing successfully. But there comes a time when these tools have to get out, and that's when it's good to have a well-filled toolbox. And the example that comes to mind is the Christchurch earthquake, right? After the Christchurch earthquake, there was a lot of damage to reinforced concrete buildings, which were the way most new buildings were being built in Christchurch. Engineers were comfortable doing those. And because they were damaged and they had to be demolished and things had to be rebuilt new, they looked in the toolbox and they wanted more resilient structural systems. And then they found a bunch of tools available to them. And so now they are rebuilding Christchurch with more than 80% of the construction is steel. So it may not seem that it's going to pay dividend immediately, but down the line, if you look at things with a long-term perspective, I think it pays off.
Okay, thank you for that. I have another question from the audience specifically for Chia-Ming Wang. What are the most recent innovative methods to retrofit steel moment frame connection panel zones in seismic regions? You mentioned Northridge.
Yeah, that's interesting. That let me echo before I answer your question. Let me echo a little bit of what Professor Bruno mentioned. He mentioned several advances that in our current code, BRPF, the steel plate shear wall, and among others, and the connections, moment connections, right? That in old days we only have one, that the pre-Northridge type, but now we have so many proprietary, non-proprietary connections. It's ironical that those advances, based on my observation, probably will not exist had we not have the Northridge earthquake. It's ironical. But I mentioned this because my observation is Aisc, even though that was a blow to the steel industry because of Northridge experience, Aisc, the key word I want to say is face it and open-minded to some extent. Deal with the problem, get the problem resolved, to let the engineers build the confidence again on the seismic design of steel structures. And because of that, there are many innovations. That is open-minded thing that Professor Bruno mentioned. I would like to share my observation with you. Yeah, it is good in retrospect. Eventually, it is good for the steel industry. Regarding what is the most way, over the years, over the past, ever since I joined the UCSD, because we have a very nice laboratory, I've tested probably hundreds of moment connections, proprietary, non-proprietaries. And also, why do we have a proprietary connections? Again, that's because of the Northridge earthquake. Otherwise, nobody will use proprietary. Why do I need it? The old connection, the prescriptive, is good enough, okay? And seismic retrofit is challenging. It's challenging. We have a weak panel zone. There are a variety of issues, not to mention the pre-Northridge, the CJP weld, the detailing is no good. So it's not easy. And if you want me to mention one connection, I am reluctant to say so, because I have seen, because of my participation with some retrofit project testing program for some companies over the years, design engineers do not necessarily use one best solutions. They use bolted bracket, they use welded hunch, they use other means, they use ribs. And I also, because of my involvement with some connections that are development, they are proprietary, and some connections, some companies are also targeting retrofit. And I'm very careful because I have been involved in both non-proprietary, proprietary. I don't want to comment on which one is the best. And the engineers how to evaluate based on their situation and to decide the best one. Okay, I try not to get into the proprietary connections to compare which one is the best. Sorry, I cannot answer your question. You have to evaluate the different kind of connections, the pros and the cons in making your decision.
Lots of choices today where there used to be only one,
Uh-huh.
and a flawed one at that.
But that's not a bad thing, Charlie. I mean, if you go to a buffet, you don't want only one item on the menu.
Okay, we have just a little bit of time left, and anyone have something they're excited about that they're working on for the future? I'm sure you all do.
I think the old guys have talked too much. I want to let the young people, young.
I can speak about the new Millick project. We're researching a potentially new shape for the steel manual, an asymmetric I shape. Part of the motivation is AISC's big initiative now on speed. So we think we could potentially increase the speed of structural floor systems. As I mentioned earlier, Xiaoming Wang is on the panel and has been incredibly helpful. So it's in the first part of year one, although we did a good bit of background research. It's over 3.5 years left, but pretty excited about that. We got some full-scale structural testing. Xiaoming Wang kind of reshifted our scope. I think it was his idea to push some experimental testing earlier. So we're working hard to do a full system test in the end of year one, and then loop back through a few times. So, but yeah, really excited about looking at an asymmetric rolled I shape. I should say rolled is the key. So.
That is exciting, and happy that you're working on that. I'm sorry to say that our time does draw to a close, and we have to wrap up our conversation. I appreciate, again, all of you spending time with us today in our second Steel Table Talk. Congratulations to all of you, again, for the award you received. Before we go, I'd like to mention what you saw at the start on a slide, our 30 by 30 challenge. The AISC Education Foundation is dedicated to supporting today's students who are the future, as was mentioned, of our vibrant industry. It's absolutely vital that the most innovative, creative, and inspired students can stay in school, especially as current challenges we are all facing make that harder for them to do. We want to expand the scholarship program we have right now through the foundation to help them do just that. That's why we created the 30 by 30 challenge, and the goal is simple. We want to raise $100,000 to help 30 students in the next 30 days. If you're able to do so, please contribute. When you do, 100% of your donation goes directly to scholarships, fellowships, and educational programs for those students. Visit aisc.org/giving by October 22nd to contribute to this 30 by 30 challenge. I'll also mention, don't forget, Steel Day is Friday. Happy Steel Day in advance. I hope you will join us for our exciting webinar, the Structural Stability Game Show, also mentioned earlier today. That was fun. Find out more at aisc.org/Steel Day. And for now, I hope you have a wonderful afternoon and a happy rest of Steel Week. Thanks, everybody.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks.
You.
Bye.